Hey everyone, welcome to this podcast called Ken Reads, where I, Ken, read out your letter that you've shared with me in the hopes that I can better help you understand what the F just happened between you and the last partner you were dating, whether it was in a relationship or a situationship. I look at these experiences from the lens of attachment theory. I don't just come up with thought terminating cliches like, they're just not that into you, or if they wanted to, they would. While some of those phrases might have their benefit in other dynamics, I try and look at this from the lens of, is there perhaps an insecure attachment issue that's at play in these particular dynamics? And though I am an Australian counsellor, I am not someone who is going to be responding to these letters as if I was with a client. I'm here to provide validation, yes, but I can't provide any diagnoses on these. So even if, a lot of people might understandably hear this and be like, well, that sounds like a narcissist. At best, I'll probably say, sounds a bit narky. I probably won't go any further than that out of respect to my ethical boundaries in regards to what I can and can't do. If you find this of benefit to you, fantastic. That's what I want. And if you want to submit your letter, you're very welcome to, once there is obviously availability per month. And I'll happily read out and share my own 2 cents as to what I think has gone on in your dating experience to offer you a sense of validation for what you've been through, and also to give other people listening a chance to feel like maybe this relates to what they've also experienced as part of collective healing. So with that all out of the way, let's dive in to the latest letter. This next letter comes from Cheryl. Cheryl writes, I am a 37-year-old woman who's known this 38-year-old guy for 18 years. We met in college. He had a long-distance girlfriend, but he and I clicked immediately. We had a 3-year-long infrequent situationship. I'm embarrassed about it because cheating is so wrong. I loved him, but I eventually moved on with my life, sort of. Sometimes I'd text him when I ended a relationship, or he would text me if he ended one. We kept it light. In February of 2024, after my divorce, I texted him after 9 years of silence between us. Surprise! He's been single for 6 years. The college girlfriend was over 12 years ago. He wasn't married, didn't have any kids, lived with his parents, but he's employed. We picked right up. We were talking every day, texting and phone calls. He was attentive and sweet. We laughed about the college year mistakes. He lives 4 hours away and asked to visit me. From that visit, it was clear we were in it. 3 months after reconnecting, we've said that we're exclusive, and he says he'd like to meet my toddler son. On the day he's supposed to drive down, he calls and says he's having a panic attack. He's afraid he's going to hurt me and my son. He's crying. I tell him we can hold it off. He says he loves me. He says he's always loved me, but was too cowardly to admit it. He says he's starting therapy because he doesn't want to ruin this. He says he has a bad habit of ruining relationships and he won't do it again. We carry on connecting more and we planned another visit. He says he's good to meet my parents and my son now. 2 weeks after meeting my parents and son, I'm supposed to go up and visit him. We talk about how excited we are. 2 days before I'm supposed to go, he tells me his parents are extending their visit with him to do some baseball games. I say I'll still come up because my friends live in his city and I'll stay with him. He starts hedging by saying he isn't sure he can make time for me. He finally admits that he's afraid for me to meet his parents. I'm crying, saying how disappointed I am that the trip is cancelled. Suddenly he says, I'm so bad at relationships. I get so caught up in my feelings that I didn't stop to think about what I wanted or if I can even be with someone who has a kid. I'm head over heels for you and I want no one else, but I can't give you what you need. But titch. I'm in shock and I say I need to hang up. I never hear from him again. It's been 13 weeks. I texted 3 times the first 6 weeks and no response. I've just stopped trying to reach him. How do I stop blaming myself for triggering him? Was any of it real? And how do I kill the hope he will reactivate his feelings and come back? Okay, Cheryl, this is such a good, relatable letter. And not that you've crafted this from thin air. This is obviously coming from a lot of pain, hurt, and betrayal, but it's really relatable and also got some really great parts to it too that I can talk about. So I want to start out by saying I'm very sorry that you've been through this. That's terrible. And I think also because you've known this guy for 18 years, that's a big, big, long time you've known one another. Like that's a lengthy relationship, right? So you've known this person through their formative years, and you've already had a significant relationship where you've been interacting with each other as part of an affair. So you've known this guy for quite some time. And if he's been having, if he had a 3 year long infrequent situationship, the affair, it suggests to me that there's obviously been a lot of intense emotion between the two of you whilst he was with his prior college girlfriend. It's at this moment that I want to talk about cheating and affairs with avoidant partners. This can be a number of things for a lot of people. But the person who is having the affair with the avoidant partner who is in an established relationship, this can cause people like you, Cheryl, confusion, feelings of guilt, shame, embarrassment, and also desire, risk taking, and longing. It's a very, very confusing experience that, frankly, can just happen at times. And it can be usually just because, in this case, the guy might have reached out to you when he was feeling lonely. He might have been emotionally dumping on you about his college girlfriend. And I don't think if you'd been like, I think if people aren't aware of, when emotional cheating happens, not that you've given me any reason to believe that it did happen, but if, those signs of, oh, this person's starting to come on hard to me, and they might actually be doing so because they're actually the one responsible for all the issues in their existing relationships. It's very easy, I think, at times to feel like, oh my God, this is the love of my life. He always valued our connection over this girlfriend. And it can be something like out of a movie, in that it's like, we're chosen. He doesn't want the college girlfriend. He wants to be with me. And so it can be one of those things where it can be very flattering and very enticing, romantic, and very exciting in a way, despite the fact that it can also make us question our value system. Because I don't think anyone goes into these experiences thinking, I'm going to be a cheater, I'm going to have an affair. It's one of those things which can be very, very, very confusing and cause lots of existential crises for people as well too. I know that conventionally cheating is bad. It is. I'm not here to debate that. I suppose I don't want to use the word but, and I want to make it clear that, it happens, and it's god awful for the poor partner who's on the receiving end of this for so many reasons, because there's humongous betrayal trauma, emotional whiplash, and it's just ghastly to feel like you've just been completely, made to feel like, you weren't enough for this person, that you weren't, able to fulfill the requirements of a relationship. So I totally respect the person feeling that way. It is just one of those things where, avoidant affairs are a confusing and very tricky and very prickly experience to navigate. And I do want to say that all feelings are very valid during this experience. I have very little clemency, though, for the avoidant attacher who's usually doing this, because much of the time, this is their fear of intimacy acting out, and they're contributing to a lot of the shit that's going on, which is not okay. So basically, you don't engage with one another for quite some time, 9 years, in fact, and then you pick up again, and it sounds like everything's going great. He's got no kids. He's been single for a while. He's employed despite living with his parents. Not bad. And you've got a toddler. Very cute. And it seems like everything's heading in the right direction until he decides to meet you and your son. And he has what sounds like a panic attack. And he admits to you that he's had a habit of ruining relationships and being cowardly about his feelings towards others. This is what I call unintentional abuse. This is when somebody knows that they have a problem that seriously affects people's lives. People have obviously told this person that he is a problem and or his behavior at the very least is very problematic. And yet he still continues to engage this way without serious intervention. This is like being someone with a serious STI where you don't have a management plan for it and you're going out infecting other people, claiming you're clean when in fact you're not. In some states of, well, not in some states, but in some countries, that's illegal and can send you to prison for potentially, doing significant harm to another person. When I describe unintentional abuse, I want to make it clear that I don't think this guy was trying to, behave in a way where he was trying to achieve narcissistic supply. He was trying to coerce you into something. He was engaging in forms of domestic violence. He wasn't, from the sounds of it, engaging in ways that we would see in what I would describe as active abuse. But he is covertly engaging in unintentional abuse, because even if it's not his intention to hurt anybody and he doesn't get any joy from it, he still does it. And so this is really, really bad behavior, and he's definitely avoidantly attached. I did chuckle at the very cliche line of, I can't give you what you need at the very end, when he declared that he had to cancel the trip for you to meet his parents. Shocking. And I can understand if you'd be absolutely devastated by this, because you've had a significant amount of time knowing this guy prior to this recent episode. And I think it's pretty terrible that he ends things by saying, I'm going to repeat this. I'm so bad at relationships. I just got so caught up in my feelings that I didn't stop to think about what I wanted, or if I can be with someone who has a kid. I'm head over heels for you and I want no one else, but I can't give you what you need. What a selfish asshole thing to say. Like, seriously, bro, you got yourself involved here. You have agency here, yet you did this as well. It's almost like he's using the I'm just so bad at relationships as an excuse, rather than acknowledging the fact that it's like, yeah, but this is part of a bigger problem, bro. You're actually going out hurting people with this kind of behavior. Not okay at all. And so I find it very interesting how that line there is different from what he was saying earlier about how he was too cowardly to admit that he had feelings. To me, that's the classic shutdown, where it's like his ego is coming up and protecting him by being like, I just didn't think about how I was feeling. I just wasn't thinking about me in this experience. Why can't you think about me? I just can't meet your needs. It's like, can you go to a therapist who can sort your shit out? Like, this is just not okay behavior at all. You asked the question, how can I stop blaming myself for triggering him? Well, Cheryl, this was going to happen inevitably. Like, I mean, you invited him to meet your son, and then he has a panic attack about it. It's like, bro, if you knew that you were going to be triggered by getting more intimate and real with a partner, you should have been telling Cheryl that this was likely to happen. You knew that this is a very common occurrence anytime you get intimate with someone, and you knew that this is something that continues to screw up your relationships. I know that he said he was going to go to therapy to work on it, but it doesn't sound to me like he's actually engaged in anything particularly meaningful, because the result was still the same. And so I would say, I understand if right now, though, you have an inner critic saying, if only I didn't invite him to meet my son, if only I didn't push for us to go and meet his parents. And you may not even be pushing. I mean, you may have been, as I can see here, he's the one telling you that his parents are extending an invitation for you to visit. If you're in the rumination cycle of thinking that you triggered him, I'm going to tell you now, this was likely set in stone. You could have played it cool. You could have acted like you were hunky-dory about this and not shown any feelings, but I guarantee you, it sounds to me like he would have likely eventually, come to this place of being like, this is too much. What do I need for myself? I don't know if I'm ready for a relationship yet. It's just bullshit. Was any of this real? Oh, yeah. I think to me, a lot of this was definitely real. I mean, the guy did have an affair with you, remember? So it does sound to me like he's definitely had some emotional bond, which he then reconnected with you over 9 years later. Oh, yeah. Definitely seems to me like there was some genuine feelings here, but his fears over love definitely surpassed his love for you. I want to also give this guy one teensy bit of credit. I will give him credit for his self-awareness on realizing that he knows that he has these issues. But again, that isn't an excuse for the fact that he doesn't appear to be doing anything significant to work through it. How do I kill the hope that he'll reactivate his feelings and come back? Well, that's a hard question to answer because being realistic, I'd say, I mean, he might. I mean, a lot of avoidant attachers do reactivate their feelings and come back, but it's all in their own terms. You got to understand this about these dynamics. They're not going to be on your terms. They're going to be based on the dysregulation of your avoidant partner, severely avoidant partner in this case. You know, this is a trauma bond. He is dictating the relationship based on how he's feeling rather than having the skill set to work through these big panic attacks he's having over intimacy. He's deciding what's best for him based on his feelings without involving you and getting help for his feelings. Now, will his feelings eventually come back? They could, because it's typical for a phase for an avoidant, and I'm leaning more dismissive avoidant with this guy to, have a period where he calms down, he misses you, he feels grief and misery off the back of, not being with you, but he might just as easily move forward and be with someone new because he can't handle what he did and he wants a fresh start to feel better. And you might be like, well, why would he do that if he's declared that he's made all these mistakes? Because this is his habit. His crutch is being with other people. His crutch is obviously, making to make him feel better. He probably just goes and dates other women in order to stay away from the intense pain of what he's, done to people. And I want to make it clear when I say the intense pain of what he's done, most avoidants, in fact, pretty much all the severe ones, don't understand the impact of their actions upon their exes or their partners, but they do often realize that their behavior can be shitty, rude, cold, and distant at times. Like they get that component. They just don't understand the emotional fallout, the withdrawal, the trauma they're often inflicting upon their partner much of the time, unless they've been through it. And if they've been through it and they're doing this to other people, well, there ain't much forgiveness from my side on that one because now you're really hurting people. So when it comes to hope, you sound like you're also just fresh off the back of this too. So Cheryl, what I would say to you is that, even though this is something where you feel as though there's probably a lot of hope, I'm going to tell you now that hope is going to die on its own accord. He might come back to you, and I'm not saying that to, create false hope. It's just to say that he probably could. I do think that it is just one of those things where it's good to be aware that if he could come back, how you respond in that moment. But at the end of the day, I think the key thing to be mindful of is the fact that, you know, you're probably in the early stages of the breakup. So as a consequence, you're probably still holding on to the hope that he will return in order to give you some sense of closure over this, to make you feel more at ease. But I do feel like you are definitely in a very, very bad case of fawning, meaning that you're blaming yourself for this guy's behavior. And eventually, one day, you will get to a point where you'll probably be sick of reading about stuff that relates to avoidant attachment and fear of intimacy. And you'll eventually get to a place of, I just didn't like how that guy made me feel. It doesn't really matter what his attachment style or his mental health condition might be. I hated how I was made to feel in that way. You may decide eventually that you want to try again and, work on things. But I think if you do, you'll probably be in a much wiser place of being like, if we're going to try this again, you need to be in therapy now. I'm not going to entertain a relationship with you unless you are in therapy. So that's what I would say to that. But yeah, Cheryl, look, again, I'm really sorry that you're in this situation because it's ghastly, but I'm proud of you for sharing this and also giving it a go and your vulnerabilities here. And thank you very much for trusting me to read this out. So I really appreciate it. If anyone else is interested in sharing their letter with me, please be aware that the month that we're in right now, which is September 2024, I've closed off my submissions and will open up again in October when we have availability. But you're very welcome to express your interest to me directly via my emails at kenreedcounseling@gmail.com. Outside of that, though, I hope this episode was of value. If it was, please feel free to leave it a review. That really goes a long way to helping provide feedback for me. And I look forward to seeing everyone again on the next letter reading of Ken Reads.